Okay, let's do it. Come on, I know it's early. You guys know that, but you guys know what time it is. All right. It's all downhill from there. I was actually going to go, thank you, and then just walk off. So thanks, Carl and others. Sorry about sun's out, guns out is what I tend to say. So as I said earlier, I'm used to speaking more of the beer 30 time of day, usually on a panel discussion of some sort. So building a deck and delivering it before the first coffee has really hit the veins is an interesting touch, but we'll have some fun with this. So, freedom, a primer. And primer is how you say that if you want to sound intellectual. So what do we know about freedom? First off, it isn't free, right? Of course, that was Benjamin Franklin who, I believe, said that. Anybody know what car that is? That is right. Smokey and the Bandit right there. Yep. I'd covet one of those. My spouse is in here somewhere, and if you see her, tell her that I deserve it. Or not so much deserve it, we all deserve it, but I need it. So elements of freedom. I'm going to wander around a touch here. Number one, maximum volume, right? Earlier we had a taste of that. Start your day that way as often as you can, specifically with that song. Number two, confident approach or gusto. You need to go for it as often as possible. Van Halen is just a standard element of freedom. Full tilt beer, unless you don't imbibe, in which case, Godspeed. But if you do, don't do the 3-2 thing. Bring it on. And content strategy, of course. Now next, who are some and content strategy is just, these days you have to work into a slide as often as you can. So who are some freedom champions? Of course, Nelson Mandela, right? Freedom champion. Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. Anybody Twisted Sister fans? Yeah, all right, thank you. President George W. Bush. The guy who loves himself some freedom, right? The Macho Man, Randy Savage, and last but not least, Jesus Christ. These here are the 5 freedom champions of the world. Nelson Mandela, Dee Snider, the astronaut/President George W. Bush, the late Macho Man Randy Savage, and the immortal Jesus Christ. And here's freedom by the numbers. Just take a peek, let it sink in, take a note if you want. This would be a good slide to take a photo of and send to your boss if they wonder why you're here. Really helps sell the whole getting out of work for 2 hours thing. So again, that's freedom by the numbers. Well, with freedom comes choices. With freedom, you can. You can take a load off. You can take things just down a notch or two. You can ratchet things up. You can cut loose. Or my personal favorite, you can grip it and rip it. And there's a motorcycle. So, things you can do in America thanks to freedom. I haven't been to many other countries, because I don't know why you would, but Just kidding, we're actually going on a lovely baby moon next weekend to France. But things I think you can probably do in other countries, but I know you can do here. You can spend a year eating nothing but Cheetos and mayonnaise. Trust me, you can. And it's not pretty. Puffs, though. Don't try the crunchy or it just gets weird. You can open several credit cards and max those bad boys out. You can fashion a headband out of summer sausage casings. And you can start a DIY vasectomy clinic in your garage. Those are the 4 things you can do in America, thanks to freedom. The 4th one's sort of still in legal proceedings, but I think it's legal. Here's some more things you can do. You can quit your job, change your career, start something new, fail, try again, fail again, and succeed. So I was asked, or I don't know if I was asked, or if it was like a rhetorical, ask everybody in the speaking network or whatever, what makes you feel free? Maybe it was a rhetorical for all of you as well, and I think it should be if it isn't. So what makes you feel free? Well, I think to answer that, you have to answer, what is freedom really? What is it really? What does Webster's say freedom is? That is the pronunciation, freedom. Freedom. It's a noun. Here's the first definition. The state of being free or at liberty rather than in confinement or under physical restraint. Right? So my arms right now, they're free. They're out there. We're going to take these bad boys to General Mills after this and do some business. Number 2, but that means the first one, right? That's the traditional sense of like a captive goes free, etc. Political prisoner was released. Exemption from external control, interference, regulation, etc. So that's getting a little bit closer to what I think we mean when we talk about freedom. Or number 3, and I think this one hits the nail on the head, the last definition here, the power to determine action without restraint. So the rest of this presentation, to whatever extent I can manage it, is going to encourage, hopefully, all of you to decide that third definition of freedom. Do you have that in your life? And I would argue that almost all of you, if not all of you, do. So you can behave accordingly, and that would be my message. So here we go. So based on that definition, does that mean that freedom is the lack of constraints, responsibility, obligations, clothing, for example? Perhaps. But I would flip it around and see the glass as perhaps half full and say, or is freedom the presence of opportunity, possibility, curiosity, playfulness, and eagles and or fireworks? I would argue that it is. So I would argue that the first part of the freedom definition, the whole not being constrained, whether physically, obviously, or mentally or vocationally, as I'll get into, is just the first half. It's what you do with it. So this is the other part of freedom that if I had a laser pointer, I'd point at a lot. I think I do, maybe. We'll figure that out later. But so here's my professional journey in a slide, and I should have put big quotes around professional. But here it is. That's really small, so I'll just read it. I squeezed a 4-year degree into 6 at a conservative Baptist college, and it wasn't because I wanted to stay there longer. But if any Bethel grads here, all right, let's be cool with more people, Bethel. Next, I got my first job at a PR firm right out of school. Some people might know Blois Olson in town. He was my first boss, and I stayed there for 36 hours. I hated it. It wasn't him. It was just sitting at a desk and having to wear khakis. So I left. And then I worked in the TV world as an editor for various cable TV hits, including House of Babies. Any House of Babies fans here? Yeah? All right. This guy. Just kidding. There was nobody with their hand up. But it was a good show. It was about a midwife clinic in Miami, and I saw a lot of live birth. Incidentally, this September, I'll be watching my own child, first child be born, and thank you, yeah. And I think after editing that show, I could do the delivery. But so a lot of live birth. That was our big hit. The other big hit that I worked on was various Sasquatch shows. So this was a production company that had its heritage in shows that later would go on to such hits as Monster Quest, etc. So big market for graphic live birth footage and sort of cryptozoology. But I did that for a while, and I eventually got the itch to be doing something different. I don't know why. I don't know what specifically I wanted to be doing. I guess I do know. No, I don't know why. Live birth, a lot of birth. Seriously, there's so much blood though. It's unbelievable. So then I suddenly found myself waiting tables and playing drums at resorts in Door County, Wisconsin. So a total shift. And I was like 27 years old at this point. So it wasn't like, it was into the career years, and here I was like slinging crab cakes and laying down bossa novas and etc. But I actually loved it. I was telling someone earlier that this was when I learned that freedom isn't just the lack of bills or things being paid or whatever. It's the unknown. To me, that's part of it. So I started really, really loving not knowing what was going to be happening next, not knowing what the next week would bring. And around the same time, my buddy who had been working at a film company in London came back here. He and I started goofing off together with creative projects in our spare time. So these were a lot of very short form things like commercial contests, make your own grain belt ad, stuff like this. We just thought it was fun. It was a fun way to write stuff, shoot it, edit it, and bring it to life. And we started winning some things, and people started calling us to do real stuff. Like, hey, we want you to do this for blah, blah, blah. And it was like, oh, okay, and we'll pay you. Like, what? So we got a gig, and we kind of pretended we knew what we were talking about, right? Like, went in and like, could you get us a budget estimate? Like, sure, yeah, well, here you go. Like, it says like $3 video on it, but we realized we sort of did know what we were talking about, at least in terms of the part of it that they were hiring us for, which was the curiosity, the playfulness, the fun, the sort of freshness we brought to it. And we nailed it a few times. And we got another gig, and then suddenly it was just a company, and it was like, this is weird. I went from waiting tables and making beer ads for fun to moving back to the Twin Cities and starting a firm, a small shop. But where did freedom come in? So I realized the desire for freedom began guiding my career long before I even knew what it was. And to me, freedom is the presence of playfulness. So whatever that means to you, to me, when I lost the ability to play, to be silly, to try new stuff, to leave work at 3 p.m. if I wanted to and there was nothing else to do, like a lot of that played into it. So it was kind of time-based, it was sort of responsibility-based, but it was also just I needed to play. And when I forgot how to play, I was losing my edge. So that's kind of why I had to shake things up. And for me, this is a big one. Some people have trouble with this. I can't live without it. Letting go of the rules was critical. So the rules. What are the rules? In any industry or marketplace, you'll encounter rules, right? They could be spoken, they could be unspoken, implied, but there are always rules. So when I got into the ad and production world, there was like, well, this is how you do it. Where are your offices? Well, I mean, we do have offices now, but we're actually wanting to go full circle and get rid of them again. And whatever it is, it could be you have to use this piece of software, you have to do whatever. I hate that stuff. You should use it because you want to. You should do something a certain way because it's the most efficient and most creative way to do it. So some rules matter, right? You can't drive 130 miles an hour down 35W in the morning. I'm sorry, Tess. I was in a hurry. Taco Bell was... Actually, incidentally, let's finish this slide, then I've got a giveaway. Some rules matter. Many of them don't. So learn to sense the difference and know that how it's always been done, while that might be relevant, it may not be. So be ready to ignore that. So know how it's always been done, but be ready to ignore how it's always been done. I can get specific on that if you want later, but it applies to anyone. There's another motorcycle. This is a good time for a giveaway. Who wants a waffle taco? You have the freedom to eat a waffle taco I bought an hour ago. It's been warming in my bag. Come on, somebody wants to demonstrate some freedom this morning. Someone wants to exercise a little freedom. Nobody? Okay, someone's going to get the gumption to come up here and claim this waffle taco. I didn't put meat in it because I wanted to be friendly to the vegetarians. So, I threw away the syrup. But when you get the urge, there it is. That's a waffle taco. It's about an hour old, and there's another motorcycle. So you have the freedom to, whatever it is you do, decide what you want to do. Get after it. Grip it and rip it, as we said earlier. And do it whether or not someone thinks you can, or should. Sometimes people will think you not only can't, but shouldn't. And you have the freedom to learn and adjust and change and improve. Of course, be humble and stay curious. So here are my tips for maximum freedom. Maximum freedom. Number one, learn what makes you feel trapped and avoid it. Because that's usually a pretty good sign that you are not experiencing maximum freedom. You're not productive when you don't feel excited. So if you're in a situation, whether it's a job, a relationship, or whatever, that you feel trapped, get the hell out. Avoid it. That's hard. 2, choose enjoyment, enrichment, and experiences over stuff. Most of us always say we do this, but can't stress it enough. As I said earlier, the summer that I waited tables and played drums, we've probably all had seasons of life like this where we lived on the least money we've had and actually had the most fun. I think that's huge. A really kick-ass cup of coffee and 3 hours of good conversation on a patio doesn't cost you that much. Car payments, mortgages, things like that. You work to get there, and then you realize that they're not what life is about. You need a lot of that stuff, but the little things too. And then this is big. Do what you love with passion, regardless of compensation. My dad taught me this. He was a freelancer for 30-some years. He's a painter now. And others will notice the paycheck will take care of itself. So basically, if you're doing what you love and you're doing it for the right reasons, you want to do it. It's not because you think it'll lead somewhere, but it's because it's what you want to be doing. You'd be surprised how it will get you to where you want to be. And this is sort of my main takeaway. If you aren't doing what you love, why not? Why not? I see a lot of very smart, very awake at 9 a.m. on a Friday people here who probably most of you, if not all of you, have no excuse for this last one. I certainly didn't. So when that voice starts to kind of tug at you and say, I wonder if I should be doing something different, whether it's work or something else, don't quit your job that moment, but, or do, and just let me know, and I'll sort of be like, wow, I guess I'll buy you a beer, and then good luck. But I would encourage you, if you have that voice and it's saying, I met someone earlier, our photographer today, who said she went to school for communications, she's a photographer, and she's going back to school to be a naturopathic doctor. What? Like, that's awesome. So it doesn't mean like every 3 years you should switch careers, but if you love what you're doing, awesome. You're very, very lucky. And if you don't, you have no excuse not to change it. I would argue that. So make strides to get yourself into a situation where you pinch yourself every day and say, I can't believe I get to do this. And even that might get old, and you might want to change something again. So just learn that feeling. So a couple of quotes I'll leave you with. One from an awesome movie that probably most of you don't know, but this is from the Tao of Steve. Be excellent, and be desireless, and be gone. Those are 3 very, very good bits of wisdom for anything, really. I think in that movie it was in the context of romance, but if you're good at what you do, you don't really necessarily expect anything of it, and you're not going to hang around and try too hard to make something of it. You're just going to sort of move on to the next thing and be excited about that. That's really contagious. People are attracted to it, and you'll have more fun doing it if you're not trying too hard. And then freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. So a big part of, that's Janis Joplin, of course, a big part of freedom for me is, like, you all have it, but it's a very meaningless word unless you do something with it. So that's my little journey. I didn't get into specifics of what. Yeah, cheers. If you like Twitter, there you go. I say a lot about baseball, and you'll probably unfollow me eventually. But that's my journey. I didn't get into specifics of what I do or who I work with or case studies or that kind of stuff, because I think that's sort of not germane to the broader subject. But happy to Q&A that stuff if you'd like. But there you go, freedom, awesome.